This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to a new YouTube video. Hope you guys are all doing well. Today we're actually going to be talking about, again, probably my favorite camera that I've ever used to date, and a camera that I've had for 4 whole years now. So I feel like it's about time to revisit this camera and share with you guys what I love about the Mamiya 7 II. So I've had the Mamiya 7 II now for just about 4 years. I put through hundreds, if not thousands of rules through this camera. And I really wanted to share with you guys in this video a little bit more of a long-term review. You know, on YouTube, you see a lot of people review cameras after a week or a couple days, or even a couple months or a year, you know, and all those are great. They have their purpose and they serve their purpose on the internet. But for me, I feel like I'm really interested in what a camera is like to actually use over a period of time, how it is to work with a camera, and overall how I can actually fit a camera into the photos that I like to take as an artist. So a little bit of backstory on me, especially when I'm shooting landscape photos. This is kind of the camera that I gravitate towards, the Mamiya 7 II. And obviously, if you're watching this video, you've probably heard of this camera at the very least, if not watched tons of videos or heard a lot about it. And, you know, say what you want about this camera, but for me, this is easily my favorite camera that I've ever used, and this is for many different reasons. I picked up this camera in 2018, which again was about 4 years ago, and I remember taking it on a trip to Mexico City. The funny thing was I didn't really know how to use a rangefinder, and I shot almost every single photo out of focus. So big learning lesson there. I remember I shot about 10 rolls on that trip, and I had no idea what I was doing. But that's kind of the point of photography, you know, you're trying something new, you're trying a new format, you're trying to figure out how to actually focus the camera. And just me being honest, I did not know what I was doing. So now fast forward 4 years from then, I've been able to use this camera on many different trips. I've taken it all over the world, everywhere from New Zealand to Japan to Ireland, to name a few. This camera really has been by my side for a lot of my travels, both internationally and around the US. And I really feel like it's a perfect companion to me in the stuff that I like to shoot. I've really fallen in love with how I see the world through this camera. To me, this just feels like an effortless extension of myself and how I like to shoot. And I think at the end of the day, tech specs and camera sensor sizes all aside, we really just want these cameras to work for us in a way that makes sense for the stuff we like to shoot. For me, this is a lot of landscape work. This is a lot of travel-based work, stuff where I'm shooting kind of big, wide open spaces. I feel like the Mamiya 7 II really shines in those areas. Interior photos are great on this camera. Really anything where you're capturing like a space, I think, or a moment versus, you know, kind of a close-up portrait or a detail shot. This camera might not necessarily be great for that just because it does have a minimum focusing distance of 3 feet. So you're kind of usually pretty far back. But for me, I love how this camera really sees the world and the images that it produces. When I pick up the Mamiya 7 II, it just feels right. To me, it just feels, again, like an effortless extension of how I like to shoot and how I see the world. I love seeing the world through this camera. It's just a beautiful camera, and I love how I'm able to capture certain landscapes with it. When I pick up the Mamiya 7 II nowadays, it just feels right. It feels easy to use, all the subtle quirks of this camera, all of the different kind of intricacies and different buttons, and it feels really easy to use, especially when I'm traveling and I don't really want to kind of be learning a new camera system, or if I just want to go out for a fun sunset by myself and take some nice sunset photos. This camera is pretty hard to beat. I think for me, it just makes a lot of sense, especially in the landscape department. As you guys have probably noticed in a lot of the videos we share on this channel, when we go out and shoot photos, especially if it's landscape oriented stuff, more often than not, it is the Mamiya 7 II that I am heading out with to take photos with. And there's a reason behind that. It's because I'm really comfortable using this camera and I know the ins and outs of it. I almost entirely use this camera to document travel, spaces, and mainly landscapes. I think it does a phenomenal job at capturing the depth and magnitude of a landscape. I think for me, when you're shooting a 6x7 format, you're getting so much depth and so much detail in the image. And the fact that this camera is so light and easy to use and easy to travel with, you get that amazing 6x7 negative in such a small, lightweight package. It's perfect. To me, this is just a really special system to use. So a few of my favorite things about this camera would definitely be how portable and light it is, how easy it is to travel with, especially internationally. I only really carry 2 lenses with this camera, the 65mm f4 and the 150mm f4.5. And these are my 2 kind of go-to lenses. I know a lot of people really love the 80mm lens. I personally like the 65 a lot more. I just like the field of view. It's much closer to a 35mm focal length, and that works for me. Speaking of the lenses, another really big selling point of this system is these lenses are probably some of the sharpest, if not the sharpest lenses I have ever used. I like to think I've used quite a bit of lenses over the years, and these are just by far the most sharp, especially when you nail that focus in the rangefinder. They're amazing. It's so sharp, but not in too sharp of a way, just really clean, clear, beautiful images that are coming out of this. I touched on this earlier, but having that massive 6x7 negative in such a small package really makes a lot of sense, especially for travel, any sort of road trip, any sort of international travel where you're jumping on planes. Really easy to travel with this system. I've used other 6x7 cameras like the Mamiya RZ67 and the Pentax 6.7. And this camera just makes a lot more sense if you're going to be traveling a lot, especially if you're just going to be holding this around your neck and walking around. It's actually just really comfortable to walk around with. It's not going to hurt your neck or your shoulders or anything like that. You can have a really nice camera strap on here and it's just really comfy. Another thing that's really nice about this camera is the leaf shutter. So the shutter is actually in the lens and not the camera body itself. What this means when it comes to actually taking photos is it allows you to shoot at a much lower shutter speed than you normally would be able to. So I'm pretty comfortable firing shots off at 1/15 of a second on this camera, especially if I just kind of hold my breath. It works really well. I've never really had too much of an issue with that. It's also really easy to throw on a tripod. I use the Peak Design carbon fiber tripod a lot with this camera, and it's a really nice lightweight setup. If I need to throw it on a tripod, works really well. Something that's also pretty underrated about this camera system is the light meter. It's absolutely amazing. When I first got this camera, I used kind of a handheld light meter, as I would normally do with any new camera system, just to see how the light meter works, if it's accurate. And after about the first few couple rolls that I got back from the lab, I noticed how accurate this camera is when it comes to metering a scene. I've had no issues with it whatsoever. It works pretty much perfectly. I tend to meter for the highlights for the most part, especially in pretty bright, contrasty scenes. I love how this camera really reads light. It's great. Now, after 4 years of using this camera, it's not obviously all perfect. I do have a few gripes about it. The main one being how fragile this camera system is, especially if you like to throw your cameras around or you're not really, super cautious when it comes to using your cameras. This might not be the system for you. I've had a lot of problems with the rangefinder patch being kind of knocked off, so it's really hard to focus once that happens. Infinity works pretty well when you focus it all the way to the end, so if you're just going to shoot normal landscape, that's easy, but if you want any sort of depth or you're focusing closer than that, it becomes really hard when that rangefinder patch is knocked off. So I've had to send it in quite a bit to get it fixed. There's actually a really amazing camera repair shop out in California called Precision Camera Works, and they do an amazing job. I've sent all my stuff to them. It's worked great since. Now, obviously, this camera system is incredibly expensive. I don't even know what the prices are on eBay, but when I bought this camera, it was, I believe, $2,700, and that included the body and the 65mm. I've recently purchased the 150mm as well for about $400. So I'm into the system about $3,000, and obviously that's a lot of money, especially for a film camera, but I do really believe that this camera has helped me change my viewpoint on taking pictures, and it's really, I think, helped me shape my eye, especially when it comes to landscape and travel photography, in a way that I might not have been able to otherwise. And to me, this is worth the price. Obviously, I'm going to leave that up to you guys, whether you think that camera is worth the money or not. If it were in today's market and I hadn't used one before, I don't know if I'd really be comfortable with spending as much as they probably are right now. But the fact is, I bought it 4 years ago and it's worked really well since. So to me, I think it's worth the investment. Another thing that's really important to note is that the shutter curtain does break pretty easily. So as you can see here, there's like a shutter curtain release and this little switch that kind of flips up like so. And that breaks extremely easily. And I know you can buy like an actual metal component that goes in there instead of the plastic, but I've had to replace this a few times as well, just because, especially when you're switching lenses, you want to make sure that the curtain is shut, or if you're unloading or loading film, probably a good idea to shut that as well. So the more that you do it, obviously it's going to break much easier. And I've had some problems with that for sure in the past, but nothing that you can't fix. Now, all in all, given this camera's price and as well as the minimum focusing distance and how fragile it is, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this to just anyone. I think if you're looking for one and you're in the market for one, you know who you are. If you love to shoot landscape photos, if you love travel photography, if you love just photographing scenes in general, I think this camera is a fantastic option for that. I think it really just depends on the kind of stuff that you like to shoot and how you want to go about it. To me, I think you can find a lot of other great options out there for far less money. If I were you guys and you weren't absolutely dead set on buying this camera, I'd probably save the extra couple $1,000s and go book a trip somewhere and actually go make some work that you're proud of, rather than just, kind of waiting around and waiting to see if this camera is actually going to change the way you shoot, because most likely, at least at first, it's probably not going to. If you keep it for many years and kind of develop a look and feel with the camera itself, definitely possible, like I've been talking about in this video. But I think it really just depends. It's not just going to be the end all be all camera necessarily that's going to switch everything for you as an artist. But to me, it's an amazing camera and I've really enjoyed using it. If you want the best kind of travel landscape camera that money can buy, obviously look no further than the Mamiya 7 II. It's a pretty special system, and as I've said, really have enjoyed using this camera over the years. It just feels right to me nowadays to really go out there and make some cool work with it myself. I'm actually heading on a road trip to Colorado here in a couple days. Really excited to share that with you guys later this month. Going to be shooting the new Kodak Gold 200 on medium format. Quite excited. Going to be making a whole video documenting that trip for you guys. But other than that, that's all for today. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much as always for watching, and take care. Now, before this video wraps up, I did want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace, for sponsoring today's episode. Now, if you guys want to make a custom website from scratch without all the coding and kind of all the hassles that come with making a brand new website, Squarespace really is the best choice out there, I think, by far, to make a beautiful website. Especially in 2022, I think having a portfolio of any kind is really important. And we want to kind of find the easiest way to get there without sacrificing any sort of quality. And I think this is really where Squarespace comes in. They have a really easy to use website that just makes a lot of sense for any creative person who's looking to get into making a portfolio or e-commerce site of any kind. I'll link my website down below if you guys want to go check that out. But they have so many beautiful templates to choose from, and it just makes sense. If you guys want to check out Squarespace for yourself, I'll leave a discount code in the comments where you can receive 10% off your first website or domain purchase. Thank you so much as always for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.